Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody who has joined. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about from insights to impact. So how do we execute our strategic plans using Nexl? Some of you may have joined the webinar that we ran pre-Christmas, where Chris Newman, Lynn and Barbara from Nexl talked about some of the challenges of business planning. How do we go about creating those business plans? How do we make those business plans actionable? So the goal of today is to take a look at Nexl and look very specifically at how we can do that. We have 30 minutes today. I'm probably going to demo for less than 20, leave some time for questions at the end. Please use the Q&A inside the webinar platform, and I'll come to those questions at the end. So I am sure many of you on this call have seen one of these. So a lot of firms have spent a lot of time with the partners working on creating very lengthy Word documents that form the basis of a business plan. Now, what we know is that the challenge with these is that they get created, maybe they get reviewed, ultimately they end up in the document management system, never to be looked at again. Maybe they get looked at the half year. Maybe they get looked at the end of the year when people are looking and thinking about compensation. And there's a frantic exercise of saying, what did I say I was going to do and what did I ultimately do? I work with a number of firms over the years who have tried to take what you see before you and turn that into something that exists in a system. And it may not be surprising to many of you on the call that the number one challenge to that isn't necessarily about the technology, but it's about the inability to do things like formatting and add pictures and diagrams and all the creative things that partners want to be able to do when it comes to putting together a business plan. So one of the nice things about Nexl is we have the ability to bring those two things together. So we have this idea of being able to create content, and then inside the context of the plan, we're able to then create structured data. And so I'm going to walk you through how in Nexl we would create a business plan and how we would ultimately start to act upon that business plan. Now, I'm not going to show you all of the capabilities of Nexl today. As you might imagine, we have lots of different pieces that sit in the background to get us to this place. So this is almost the culmination of all of the things that we're doing in the rest of the platform. But of course, please feel free to reach out and we would happily provide a demo of the rest of those capabilities. And equally, we will be running monthly demo sessions like this where we open up different bits of the system so you can see how we really go about solving some of the problems that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So what you're looking at here is an example of a business plan. The focus of this plan is very much through the lens of a specific partner. However, the principles that we're going to talk about here today, you could apply to a practice group plan, you could apply it to a sector plan, you could apply it all the way up to a firm plan. And I have worked with firms where they even have office plans as well. So we can use these capabilities to create and manage those different types of plans. Within the system, we have the ability to create templates. And so the structure that you're seeing here can be replicated multiple times. We can provide guidance to partners as they go about filling out and completing these plans. The goal here is to make it as simple and easy as possible for the partners themselves to come and interact with the system, but ultimately for BD and marketing to then collaborate with the partners as they're creating these plans. And then also as you start to think about things like sector plans and practice plans, how can we bring multiple partners together into an environment where they can collaborate? And increasingly, as we talk to firms, one of the things that we identify is that this big missing gap around how do we operationalize everything from a BD plan to thinking about events and thought leadership campaigns and all those sorts of things. CRM historically has been a very good database. I can capture lots of information, but ultimately, how do we come together around that information so that we can actually get work done? So in this example, you'll see we have the overview here, and I've got a number of tabs on the left-hand side. Again, as part of building out the template, we can have as many tabs as we want to. Within these tabs, we can provide guidance so that a partner knows what to do, what sort of information they should be contributing in these different sections. Now, in this example, you can see we've identified the objectives that we want to focus on for the year. We're tracking those objectives over time. So the goal for this partner is to generate 12 million in revenue, and we can see that he or she has generated 13% of that. Again, these are just examples. You can have as many objectives in here as you want to, and we have lots of different metrics that we can use to monitor those objectives. As you can see, we have the full creativity of Word at our fingertips, so I can create content. So this is just an example of what a summary might look like. In this case, the plan is based around an M&A partner in New York, and the partner has a specialism around financial services and a trending skill set in AI and high tech. And so you'll see some of that threaded through the demo as we go through. I can look at something like my SWOT analysis. So again, I'm creating a table here. I'm adding some content. So all those things that the partners typically do in Word, maybe they do it in PowerPoint. Some of that creativity is available to them so they can do the artistry of building out their plan. But as you'll see, we can then jump from here into how do we now start to capture structured data that we can use. So I've written all the narrative. This is how I think about myself. This is where I think my strengths and weaknesses are. Here are the plans. Here's ultimately what I want to do over the year to go and achieve my objectives and ultimately achieve the compensation that I want at the end of the year. But how do I do that? How do I start to focus my time into the areas, more specifically the clients, that I think are going to generate the revenue for me? Now, the traditional rainmakers of the world will intrinsically know where they go and find that. The goal here, however, is to help the broader collection of partners to start thinking about where they should place their chips. And so we start to use the data of the firm, potentially external data, to give indications of where that might be. So in this example, we've set up a tab here that is called My Clients. So the system has identified all the clients that I have. Again, this is a demo, so we have a subset here, and it's starting to present intelligence to me that's going to help me make a decision across all of my clients, which are the ones that I intentionally want to focus on to try and generate growth. Now, of course, a partner is going to work across all of their clients, but the goal here is to say, is there a subset that I'm really going to put some specific attention to, because that's how I think I'm going to achieve my billings number for the year. You can see here we have this idea of a client category. So what are we doing? We're looking at, in this case, the financial data. We can mash together with that things like relationship data. We can also look at marketing engagement data. And the goal is to give an indication of what is this client in the context of growth. So you can see we've got a number of different examples here. So I have a growth, we have this idea of good. So that would be a key client for you, probably somebody that has spent a lot of time with you, generating good revenue in comparison to other companies in a similar industry. They're at the upper end of revenue generation based on who they are as an organization. We can start to identify companies that might be trending at risk. So within the context of you as a partner, is there a risk developing here? Are we seeing a drop-off in revenue? Are we seeing potential impact on payment days? Are we seeing your relationship with this particular client trending in a negative direction? So we're serving those up very easily for somebody to consume and to start making a plan. You'll see here we have this idea of a grey client. So a grey client in our vernacular is, here's a company that you should probably stop doing work with. Now that may be through the lens of you as a practice, but it may equally be through the lens of the firm at large. So this is just not a good client. They're always looking for big discounts. They want to use all of our experienced resource. They pay late. All of those things we're mashing together and giving you an indication. Now, ultimately, there's a vetting process that sits on top of this, because there's the things that aren't written down, that we don't know, that don't sit in any data sources. So there is some human oversight that sits over the top of this. What you'll notice on the right-hand side is we are giving insights as to why this particular client has been categorized in this way. So one of the things that you will see in Nexl is this trend towards narratives around insights. So one of the things that we have observed over many years of working in this space is that whilst dashboards can be very compelling, they're not always very easy for partners to consume. But what we do know about partners, of course, is that they spend all day reading content. So what you'll see developing in Nexl is this idea of how do we take data-based insights and deliver that in a mechanism to a partner that they can very quickly consume and start to make some decisions. So in this case, I could come through, I could look at all of my clients. And by the way, we can add additional data points on here. So this is just a demo to give you a sense of what's possible, but I could have additional data points sitting off in this list if I wanted to. And in this case, I've selected one of these clients to be a focal client for me from a BD perspective. What we can also do is we can then say, well, those are your clients, but who are some of the other clients of the firm that may be of interest to you as you're thinking about building your business plan? So the system is looking for companies that have a growth potential in your particular practice. So you have probably done no work for this client, but at large, the firm is doing work. And the client is categorized as a good client, right? So you have a great experience with them, good relationships, good trending revenue. So you jumping in with a new practice is going to be additive, but you've also got a greater than average chance of having some success in engaging this particular client. So again, you can see we create the narrative. So we're starting to give some intelligence as to why this is a suitable client for you to consider. And again, we can start to layer in other pieces of intelligence. So in this case, we're starting to look at what are the services that this client could logically take from us as a firm. And it happens that M&A, which is my practice, is one of those categories. Now, how do we do that? It very much depends on the data in the firm, but at the simplest form, we can look at peer companies and say, from a revenue perspective, based on the services that they currently take from us, what is the next best hop to go and generate more revenue out of this particular client? And so in this case, M&A is that next best hop. We can start to see things like who are the contacts that I have engagement with. We can start to look at internal connectors. So looking at internal relationships, I can see that I have a working relationship with Phil and Matt, who equally have relationships into, in this case, Liberty. So the way that we're displaying this, Matt and Philip have active working relationships. They're generating revenue with Liberty. So even though I have a relationship with Krista, I can go to those internal sources and I can I can ask them to make an introduction to me to help build out the case for working with me in my particular practice. We can also start to put in things like, have I actually done any work? So I might not be the client partner. I might not even be a matter partner on this particular client, but it appears that I have done a little bit of work, right? So now I have some understanding of this client potentially. So the goal here is to say, what are the data points that we can put in front of a partner as they're thinking about the BD targets that they want to select that can inform the decisions that they make? Now, typically what we see is that there's a collaborative exercise here between the partners and the business development team to do some of this. But increasingly, I think we'll find as we're serving up the intelligence in this way, it will become easier and easier for partners to do this themselves. We could also do this with prospects. We haven't built that out in the demo, but if you have prospects in your systems, if you're connected to third-party data sources, we can start to figure out who are the other companies that you're not working with as a firm that you might want to consider. So I've made some selections. I've identified some companies I want to focus on as my BD targets, and I can then come to my BD target list and I can see those in one single place. So at the beginning of the year, I'm making that decision. Here is where I can come on the regular to see, okay, are these the clients that I want to work on? I can come back to my clients and firm clients and we can start to see as things are changing. So the data models are running all of the time. And if things are changing in the background, we can potentially pivot as we need to. But for now, these are the ones that I've identified. And in the way that I would in a Word document, I can start to come and write some strategy around how do I plan to go and focus on this client? Are there particular contacts that I intentionally want to go and build or grow relationships with? So these sort of data points start to become really valuable as I think about how do I actually go and act upon this business plan. So if I come to my insights, what I can now see is some opportunities to connect. So what we're doing is we're looking at both internal and external triggers in the data to identify meaningful opportunities for a partner to pick up the phone or potentially send an email to stay connected with their contacts. One of the things that we know about a significant number of partners, the next generation of partners, those people who aren't rate makers, is that act of staying in touch is something that they find difficult. How do I find meaningful reasons to stay in touch that doesn't feel awkward or out of place? And so the goal here is to say, what are the things that are happening that we can use to spark a conversation? So in this case, we've got a very simple example. So Christine Todd, who's somebody that I have identified as wanting to grow and build a relationship with, has registered to attend an event that the firm is running in the next couple of weeks. So I can reach out to Christine and say, Christine, I can see you're coming. Why don't we grab a coffee before the event? I'd love to just catch up with you. Now, this data does exist. If you have an existing CRM system, if you're doing your event tracking, this data, of course, is available to you. What's key here is we're serving it up to the partner in a way that they can start to consume. But what we're also doing is we're putting a prioritization layer on top of these recommendations. So again, with data, you can generate all sorts of recommendations. But if we overload a partner with 10, 15, 20 different things for them to do from a business development perspective, we know that categorically they won't do any of those things. And so the goal here is to say at any moment in time, what is the highest priority things that you as a partner should focus on from a BD perspective, but also to layer on top of that to say, in the context of the clients, how do we make sure that partners aren't bumping into each other whilst going through this exercise? Because, of course, the last thing you want is a client to get 10 outreaches from 10 different partners all in the same week. And so that's on top of these. Now, you can see we've got lots of different examples here. And increasingly, as we work with firms, we're thinking of more and more of these potential triggers. But RSVPs is a very simple one. We can also start to, for those firms that are based in the US, we can start to look at things like litigation filings. We can use that as an indicator to reach out. Now, we're not saying here that this is an opportunity. We're not even saying that this is a lead. We're just saying here is a meaningful reason to reach out. So in the case of a filing, for example, you could send an email to say, I just noticed, Richard, that Barclays have filed a case against you. That must be really stressful. Happy to chat if you want some ideas around how you might be able to solve for that problem. So just trying to have a meaningful dialogue with somebody and potentially offer your services, but it doesn't need to be as overt as that. So we've created the BD plan. We've written all of the creative stuff that we want to about what it is that we're going to do. We've captured some very structured data based on data to say these are the BD targets that I'm going to focus on. And what we're now doing is we're using the data to create opportunities to go have that conversation, to be top of mind, so that when there is an issue, we are the people that ultimately the clients come to. Now, through the purpose of working on this plan, I can start to collaborate as a partner. So I can start to create tasks. I can share those tasks with my team, so I can have people helping me. I can share those with BD, with marketing. So I have one place to come and see what are all of the things that I have agreed to do, that I have passed out to other people in the team to do from the perspective of delivering against this plan. As I'm building these conversations, developing these relationships, in theory, I'm starting to develop opportunities. And so I can start to track those opportunities against this plan. So I can create those in the system. I can see those against the plan. I can see how I'm performing across here in terms of the revenue the potential revenue that I've identified, revenue that I've closed, all of those very sort of traditional sales metrics, which might be a step too far for some people. But increasingly we see firms wanting to get to this level. So I'm capturing my opportunities. I can even start to capture my documents in here as well as I'm thinking about working on the plan. The beauty of this is when it comes to compensation time, I can now come back to my plan and I can demonstrate all of the things that I've done, the opportunities that I've identified, the revenue that I've generated to deliver against this plan and justify the ask that I'm making from a compensation perspective. So a very quick whistle-stop tour of how you can take a business plan from Word. I can bring that into a system and I can use data to make that actionable. I'm going to open up to questions. If anyone has any questions, please fire away. I will find my way into the Q&A and I can answer those questions.
So John had a question. How does an individual plan integrate with a practice group level plan?
So that's a great question. So one of the things that you can do, that you will be able to do shortly, we're not there yet, is be able to layer these workspaces on top of each other so that things like the objectives will roll up into a workspace higher than this plan. Equally, as we're starting to generate lists of BD targets, we can bring those across into that practice group workspace. So I can see who are all of the clients that are being targeted by everybody in the practice, and we can use that from a planning perspective. We're not quite there yet, but that is the intention. So you'll be able to roll it up through a practice, potentially into a segment, and then ultimately up into the firm. The important piece about that is that I can then start to look at BD plans cross-practice. And so when you start to think about client teams, we can gather partners together around these plans so that they're all collaborating to generate the best experience for the client. Great question.
We have another one from Olivia. She said, I like that the first tab is overview because you can incorporate both objectives and that summary narrative. When I create a new workspace, the first page is structured differently. Do we have control over that view?
Yes, if you can reach out to if you're an existing client, please reach out to your CS person and they will be able to show that. But yes, absolutely, you can create in this plan. I can actually come and add different types of pages in here. I now can't get to that piece, but you can see here I can add other different components. So if I wanted another tab where I could add content, I can do that. So I can add a new page here. Equally, I can add other lists of companies. I can create generic lists too. So you'll notice here I've got a marketing initiatives tab. So this is where we can create structured lists of other types of information. So very flexible in terms of how you design the workspaces. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone who attended. For those of you who are watching this on the recording, thank you for taking the time to watch. Please look out for the follow-on webinars. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be running monthly webinars where we are breaking open the technology and you can see how we're solving for different problems. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good day.